Okay, so I have learned a lot about leadership throughout this course. I think that I've come away with a newfound understanding of what it means to be a leader. Um, I think that a lot of the concepts and practices we covered throughout the course are things that I have definitely associated with leadership before, but I had never put them into the form of a model or, written them down on paper or analyzed them or seen them like put into place in the real world. So I think that was definitely helpful to see them in the form of a model that I can then look back on and put into place in my own life. And I feel a lot more equipped now to take on leadership roles. I've learned that leadership is not an inherent skill. Like one person is not a better leader than another simply because they have this inherent talent for it. It's something that everybody has the potential to become a great leader, something that anyone can do. I think that it is definitely a learnable skill. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Something that anybody can learn how to do, with the right discipline and the right motivation. Anybody can be a leader and be a great one. And I think another big takeaway was that leaders are all around us. Leaders are not necessarily people that have a specific title or position. That does not make you a leader. A CEO or a president of a company is probably a leader, but their title is not what is not what makes them a leader. What makes them a leader is how they relate to people and the influence that they have on the people that follow them. To be a leader, you need people to follow you. So I think that was a big takeaway. And also the difference between management and leadership is something that I hadn't really thought about before. But when we had to select our leaders to interview, I think the first thing that came to mind was kind of people in management positions or supervisors. So I'm thinking title and position rather than, what kind of characteristics and qualities does this person have that make them a leader. So learning the difference between the two was a big thing for me. So management is, it's organizational, and leadership is relational. So you can be a manager and not a leader, but you can also be both. And I think it is very important to understand that leadership is a relationship. Without your followers, you would not be in a leadership position because a leader has to have people willing to follow them. So I think, it's very important for a leader to work on building relationships and, building an atmosphere of trust and camaraderie and friendship. Because without that, you're not going to gain the respect of your followers. So that's definitely a key thing. And then as far as the Cousys and Posner's leadership model, the 5 practices that we talked a lot about in the course were to model the way, inspire shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart. I think that all of those things are things that I can look back on when I find myself in a leadership role and, ask myself if I'm doing those well or if I need to work on improving in those areas. Those are very helpful things that I think I will kind of always remember in the back of my mind, especially when I find myself in a leadership position. And I think that it was very helpful to do the interview process and to write the analysis paper. It kind of put those practices into perspective for me, seeing them play out in a real world situation with somebody who I know personally. I think that was just a helpful way to kind of make those things stick, a little more than just reading them in a book. And I think that the things that I focused on a lot in my paper that my leader that I interviewed did really well were modeling the way, inspiring shared vision, and enabling others to act. He did those things really well, I think. He was great. He gave me examples of how he leads by example, how he he solidifies his own values. He knows who he is as a person so that he can then, build a vision that others are also inspired to follow. And he enables others to act because he has relationships with them, and he allows them to, display their own talents, and he tries to encourage them to find ways to get better and improve and, exercise leadership within whatever roles they have in the organization as well. He lets them know that he appreciates them. He celebrates, when a goal is accomplished. He lets people know, hey, like, great job, we did this, here's the results of what you put into place. So I think those are some things that he did really well. And something that I took away from the writing process and from the interview was that he was, the leader that I had was particularly open and vulnerable. So I thought that was admirable that he was not only talking about his strengths, but he was willing to talk about his weaknesses. He was able to identify what those were, and really, delve into the ways that he's working on getting better at those things. Particularly, he talked about how he's working on trying to become a better listener. So he's trying to focus on not always coming into a conversation with a problem-solving attitude. He's trying to focus more on just being present in the conversation. He said that he's trying to work on listening to understand rather than listening to give an answer. And that just really stuck with me for some reason. So maybe that's something I should work on myself. But I think that was just something that I took away from the interview that I think I will remember. And it was something that Koozies and Posner's also encourage leaders to exercise active listening. And one of the ways you can do that is by asking questions. I think asking questions shows that you care about the person, that you're engaged in the conversation, and that you care about the person enough to know what's important to them. So you're asking questions that are relevant. And then you also can ask questions that allow the people to demonstrate their own skill sets and their knowledge. So I think that's a very important thing for leaders to understand. And then as well as, seeing the different things that my leader was good at and was not so good at, I think that in the future I can then be able to analyze myself. When I find myself in a leadership role, I think it'll be easier for me to identify the things that I am succeeding in and the things that I need to improve in. Since I have done an analysis on a leader before, I think that'll be helpful in the future. And I think one big takeaway is that leaders are always learning and growing. They're always looking for ways to improve themselves, and to, learn new skills, get better at the skills they have. So I think that's definitely something that I will focus on myself. And I think a big thing as well to talk about is the difference between a good leader and a good Christian leader. So looking back to our week 1 discussion when we first had to define the difference between the two, this is what I had said. I said, a good leader must possess the ability to influence others, model the way, inspire shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, encourage the heart, and honor God's authority in their lives and those they influence. And I would definitely say that I still agree with that statement. Definitely a good leader is going to put all of the practices that Koozies and Posner talk about into practice, right? But I think the difference between a good leader and a good Christian leader is that a good Christian leader recognizes God as the ultimate authority in their lives. They put him first in everything they do. They allow God to lead them, and then they lead from that perspective. And I think a good Christian leader possesses, a lot of godly characteristics that are found in the Bible, such as humility, integrity, faith, loyalty, compassion, maturity, you know, all of these different things are things that I think really define a good Christian leader and are things that I would hope to do well at myself and demonstrate to others. Yeah, and so as I continue on my leadership journey, I definitely hope to exemplify Kuzes and Posner's leadership practices as well as godly characteristics. I want to lead with love and build relationships with the people that are in my circle of influence. And I think as God leads me, I would hope that others would then look to me as an example and that they would then be inspired to put God, you know, in the place of leadership in their lives as well. And yeah, overall, I definitely was reminded throughout this course that leadership is something I can put into place in all areas of my life, regardless of whether it's at work or at home, with friends, with family, whatever situation I'm in, I can find a way to become a leader in that. Yeah, and I'm just overall really grateful to have taken this course. I think I learned a lot that I will take with me into the future and into whatever leadership roles I find myself in. I will definitely be looking back on the things that I learned here. Yeah, and so I'm just grateful for this course, and I thank you for being part of the journey.